Hello everyone, and welcome back to the How to Build an RTS Game from Start to Finish series, where we learn to build a game from the ground up while completely at the mercy of you guys. Hey guys, in our last video, we cleaned up our code a bit and moved our health functions to their own scripts to keep things a lot more clean. If you haven't seen that one yet, go on ahead and check it out as we're going to be using the same project as before, and I'll link to that in the card and in the description below. This time, we're going to add some buildings with stats and actions that we can start using to our advantage in our game. So, before we get started, let's just change up our scene a little bit here. The first thing I want to do is I want to take this plane and I'm going to scale this up. Okay, we're just going to do it to 10 and we're going to have a little bit bigger area here. I also want to take our player units and I'm just going to remove them all. Okay, and I'm actually going to remove 3 of these units as well. Now, I'm going to check out our camera position here, and I'm going to grab this unit, and I'm just going to move him where he'll be kind of on the left side of where that camera was looking. Maybe a little bit more up. Okay, that way we still got one in the scene. And now we need to make a building. So let's go on ahead and do that now. The way I want to do this is we're just going to create a temporary building for now. So we're going to right click, create 3D object. We'll just make, let's say, a cube. And what I want to do with this is we're going to reset the transforms. And we'll just name this building. All right. And actually, let's rename this plain ground as well. Cool. I'm going to minimize these so they're not all in the way. Nice. Now, I'm going to, let's make this a prefab. So we're just going to drag our building into prefabs. And let's open this up. And let's start making it look like a building. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to scale this. We probably want it to be a little bit bigger. Shorten it. Give it a elongated look. Well, here, let's just, maybe we'll just kind of shoot for random numbers here. Let's go with a 3, 2, 4. That looks pretty good. Okay. We also want it to be on the ground level, so we're going to take half of our Y and move it up. There. That looks pretty good. Don't you think? Now, what we need to do is let's make a material so that way we can tell our building apart. So let's go to materials. We'll right click, create material. And I'm just going to make this I don't know, let's do like a light bluish color. And I'm going to rename this material to be, I don't know, we'll do like building mat. And then let's drag and drop that onto our building. Okay. Now we should see that on there. We do not. Oh, we can't put it on the prefab, right? So we have to come in here. And we also want to remove this building. And then let's drag the new building in and it snaps it to the ground. And then we'll put our building material on the building. If it'll go on there. Oops. Oh, I dragged a building on there. Building material. Oh Lord, why is it not going on here? Also, it looks like we need to set this again. Yeah, okay, there we go. So it was on there. We just didn't get the saved color there for some reason. That's weird. Okay, so now we have our building. So I'm gonna actually, let's put this to where it's kind of over here on this side. And that should still be in the camera view. Yep, okay. So now we got a building over here. And now that we have our objects and our new scene set up, we can start creating some scripts for our building. So the way I want to do this is we're going to create a new folder and we'll call it buildings. Okay. And let's create, wait, actually yeah, buildings is fine. And then we'll create a C# script, and we're going to call this one basic building. Okay. Now, let's open this up into Visual Studio. Okay, we got to move this over. All right, now we're going to start getting it ready to take some code. So let's remove our inside. We don't need this. And our namespace is going to be buildings, because we're still following our folder path, right? And we're going to put this smack dab in the middle. Okay, now this is going to be a scriptable object, so let's change that. Oops. Scriptable object, and we want to create an asset menu for this. So we'll do create asset menu. Okay, and we're going to do file name. And for this, let's just do, I don't know, building, yeah. Okay, and then our menu name is going to be new building, and then we're going to put a slash so we can go deeper into the folder path, and we'll just call this a basic. So this is going to be our basic building. And if you remember, we did a lot of the same thing with the characters, so it's a lot. It's almost exactly the same. We're just going to be changing a few things. So let's hop back into Unity, and I actually want to clean this up a bit because we're going to have to be creating more scriptable objects, and things are looking a little bit dirty here. So we're going to create a new folder. Let's go to Assets, Create Folder. We'll call this Scriptable Objects. Okay, and then we'll right click on that folder and say Create Folder, Buildings. Okay, and then we'll put the units with our script with the scriptable objects in it. We'll put that one inside of our scriptable objects folder. There we go. Now, if you see when we go to create, we now have new unit and new building, right? So we could create our building if we wanted to. I'm not going to create one yet, but it's not that big of a deal if you feel like you want to. So our menu is working properly. So now let's add some stats to our building the same way that we did for our character. So let's make a new script. Let's see, C# script. Okay, and we're going to name this one building stat types. Okay, so let's open that up in Visual Studio. And then we're going to get this one ready for our code as well. And we're also going to make this one a scriptable object. So we're going to do the same thing as we did to the last script. We'll just remove the middle. We're going to remove these using statements that we do not need. We'll create our namespace. Okay. Then we'll smack this right in the middle and make it a scriptable object. Okay, so now we're going to add some stuff to this one. We actually want to add a new class, kind of like we did on the last one, or when we made our character units. So what we're going to do is well, we need this to be serializable, right? So we're going to do system.serializable, okay? And then we're going to do a public class. We'll just call it base, and we'll open it up. Now this is where we're going to put our actual stats at. So the stats that I want to use are probably, let's just do something simple for now. So we'll do public float. We'll give the building some health, right? And maybe some armor and attack, just in case it's like a tower or something. I don't know if tower would be considered a, well, these are just base stats, so it's not that big of a deal. So let's save that. And now let's switch over to our basic building script that we made earlier. And we're going to start taking some of these stats in as well. So the first thing I want to do is create an enum. So we're going to do public enum building building type. Okay, And you know what? We can, well, we'll just leave it. Building type. And right now we're only going to make one type, so we're just going to call it barracks. Okay. Now we want to grab a public building type, and we'll just call it type. Okay, and public. Now remember, if we're going to do a name, if we just do string name, um, there's already a name variable, so you'll get this, and it'll say inherited member object name uses a keyword hiding blah 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 blah. So the way that you want to fix this is say new, public new string name. You're renaming this name variable to something else because it's actually already in use um, as the game object name. So now let's do public game object, and we want to grab our building prefab, right? So let's do building building prefab. Okay, and so that's going to allow us to grab our game art later on when we need it and actually be able to use the proper game art. So let's do another one. Let's do public building uh, stat types. Okay, dot base. And so building stat types dot base is that class we just made. So we got building stat types dot base. Okay, and we're going to name this base stats. Okay, so now actually let's style this up a bit, make it pretty before we go on and start messing with anything else. So right under our enum here, let's add space 15, and then let's make a header. And in our header, we'll say something like, I don't know, building settings. Okay. And then we want to separate these stats as well. So let's put one here, and we'll go space. We'll give it another space of 15. And then I want another header. And we'll just call this building base stats. And then we're going to add some space above that. Because remember, when the space is on the top of the header, it actually puts a space below it. And then the space that's under header puts it above it. So we're going to put space above the header of, let's do 40, just like our other ones. And there we go. Now we should have some style. Let's save that. And we can actually hop over here into Unity, and in buildings, I'll create one now just so you can kind of see that style, new building, basic. So that just put building settings in here as a header, put a little bit of space, and then our variables, and then a space of 40, a new header, and then another small space, and then we have our base stats listed here. Okay, so awesome. Now let's make another script. We're going to call this one building actions. And so these are going to be the types of things that you can do with your building. Maybe it's create a character, or it's an upgrade, or whatever it is. So let's open that up, and let's get this one ready for some code. So we're going to remove everything in the middle. We're going to remove these using statements, and we're going to put our namespace. Okay. I'm just going to slap that right there in the middle. And if you guys feel like this is going kind of fast, it's because, I've already covered how to do most of this in the earlier tutorials. So if you haven't been following those along, please check them out, because I'm not going to, keep teaching the same thing very slowly. This part I think we should pretty much have down by now, right? So in this one, just like we did in our stat types, we're going to do this again. We're going to make another class just like that. So we'll do system.serializable, okay? And then we want a public class. And let's just name this one building units, okay? So it's going to be like the types of units that we can create in this building. And right now we only have a list of basic units, right? So let's do public units dot basic unit. Okay, and we're going to make this an array and call it basic units. Okay, and I'll show you what this does. This is really cool. Um, so in order to show you, let's go to our basic building, and we're going to add that in here. We could probably just add it right here. So we'll do public building actions and dot building units, and we'll just call this units, right? Okay, and let's save that. Now, if we look at our building, we have this new little drop down, and it says units. So when we open this up, now we have another one that says basic units, and we can change the size of this, right? And now we can say what types of units we want to make. So let's actually just put one in there. We can say this, our barracks makes warriors. And there we go. So once we start adding more things in there, maybe some buildings can make, if we have, I don't know, archers and pikemen or something like that, whatever it is, some buildings will be able to make multiple different types. So if you wanted to make multiple different types, you just change the size up and then you add some more in there. But for these purposes, we're just going to build one. Okay. And actually, let's just set some random stats in here. We'll give the health of, I don't know, 500. Armor, we'll say 25. And attack, this building's not going to attack anyone, so we'll just leave it at 0. Okay. So this is pretty good setup. We do want this to be a barracks. It is the only one, though, so it's not that big of a deal. And let's drag our building prefab right in there. And there we go. Sweet. So now that we have some basic stats set up, we actually kind of want to make the building start working for us now, right? So let's create a new folder inside of our buildings, and we're going to create one called player, just like we did with the units. Now, inside of player, we're going to create a C# script, and we're going to call it player building. Okay, so let's open that one up, and let's start getting this one ready for code, right? So we're going to do the same thing. We're just going to remove the middle. We're going to remove our using statements. We're going to make a namespace. Actually, we want this to be buildings, and we're going to make player. We're still following that folder path, right? Buildings, and then there's a player folder inside of buildings. So then we'll remove this, put this in the middle. Okay, so now all we really even need to add here, at least for now, is going to be, we're going to add a public building stat types, okay? Dot base, and we'll just call it base stats. And so this is going to be what's sitting on our actual building, and we're going to be able to read the stats out onto it. So we're going to send the stats the same way we did the units. So in order to do some of this, we want to move. Remember, we had this function. I kind of want to do this differently. I believe it's in, I don't think we have it open in here. So let's hop over into Unity, and it's our units, and we have our unit handler. Okay, so let's open up our unit handler, and we can close some of these out that we don't need anymore, that we're not using. Input handler, no. Let's keep the player manager open. We don't need unit stat types, or we don't need building actions anymore either. So if you didn't already have player manager open, just come and open that up as well. That's in our player folder, player manager. Okay. Okay, so let's look at our unit handler script. This is how we're setting our stats on our units. So we kind of want to do the same thing, but we don't want to, make two of these functions the exact same. So let's actually just let's hit Control X to cut this. Okay. And then let's bring that over into our player manager where we were originally asking to set those stats. We can remove the start function. It doesn't do anything. And let's just paste it in here. Okay. Now, some of this stuff's going to be broken, but that's okay. We can fix this just fine. So, before we start changing all of this, because some of this is going to change once we do this, I want to rename this as well. I'm going to remove this unit. I just want it to say get basic stats. Okay, so now let's save that, and this should be fine now. So now in our player manager, let's get to work on fixing this script, and it's going to be pretty easy. So we can actually remove, oh well, this part right here, we don't need uh, all this stuff, right? Because this function is now right here, so we don't need any of this in there. But we do want to remove unit, um, unit, right? And let's see. Actually, no, we want the unit to be in here. We'll leave unit in this one, okay? Actually, no, we do want to take that out. So we're going to take out unit, unit, okay? And we'll remove unit on that function name as well. Okay, so now in all this stuff in front of that, we can just remove. Oops, we still want it to say set basic stats. Okay, we'll remove all of this. So it just says set basic stats, player units. Okay, now we don't need this anymore because all this is doing is referencing this. So we can just use these now. So we can just remove that. Okay, now for our get basic unit stats, one, we changed the name on that, right? Which, you know what, it might, let's change that back just because I don't want people to get confused. We'll leave this as units in the unit handler, and then let's go back to our player manager and we'll just add um, something in the front here. We'll say units dot um, unit handler dot instance in front of that. Okay, so then that's going to fix this function. So now we'll fix this function as well, which is going to be units dot unit handler dot instance dot get basic unit stats. Okay, and then we'll do it to this one as well. Okay, now this p units is just player units, right? So let's just update that, player units. Okay, and then e units is just enemy units. All right, now this player unit, this is coming from our units um, namespace, right? So we're just in the regular player namespace, but we want units.player. So we need to come down here and go to units.player, and we'll do that here as well. Oops, I put that one in the wrong spot. And see, that's how we can keep things separated using our namespaces. And it's the same thing with the enemy. So units.enemy.enemy units. There we go. So now this is a bit cleaned up now. It should begin working for us again. So that's good. Now, before we do too much further, let's save this. And we still need to add a building handler, right? We have a unit handler, but now we need one for buildings. So let's, on our buildings one, let's create a C# script, and we'll call it building handler. Okay. So let's open this up in Visual Studio. Once again, we're going to set it up. Okay. All right. Now, Um, I think one way that we can do this easier, instead of just typing everything out, let's just hop over into our unit handler script right now, and let's just think about what we can use over there. First thing that I'm noticing about this is we don't actually need to set these in here. And this is probably a bit of a waste. So let's just remove this, okay? Because this is public, and we can set that in the inspector, right? So we'll just set that in the inspector later. And then let's save that. Now, what else could we use? Um, as a matter of fact, let's just copy all of this for now, and then we'll just delete what we don't want, right? Okay, so let's hit Control C to copy, and then I'll go into our building handler and I'm going to paste. Okay, so first of all, we don't need this. We're going to make this a building handler instance, right? And we don't want basic units. We want basic buildings. And these are not the names of our buildings. And right now, we only have one, so barracks. All right. These layers, we don't necessarily need them right now. So I'm just going to remove them. All right. Now this. So let's, instead of unit stat types, let's do uh, building stat types. Right. What's going on here? Building stat types. Okay. And then instead of a basic unit, we're going to do a basic building. I'm going to change unit and we'll just call this a building. Okay. Unit is now building. We don't actually need these two because we only have one building right now, right? So we can take these out. And let's change this unit to building. And it's not going to be a worker. It's going to be our barracks. Also, we want to change this. So remember how this worked, where we're actually grabbing the name -1. Okay, so if we look in Unity, we have these player units. Okay, and underneath our player units, we had the containers, and it's workers. They're plural. However, we need to create an empty object and do the same thing for our building. So we're going to reset the transform. We're going to call it, well, we need to player buildings. Okay. And I'm going to put this up here right under player units. And inside of there, we're going to create another empty object. And if you notice, it'll just say barracks. Now we could say barrackses, but since we're only removing one letter, we're just going to leave it as barracks. And we know this, right? So we're going to hop in here into our building handler. And I'm going to say it's just barrack, right? Because we're removing a single letter. So now it's just barrack, okay? Um, and that should do on this. So that should set up our building handler script for us. So let's save that. And this isn't actually going to um, work in our player manager yet, right? Because we have to add another one of these. So in order to do that, I'm just gonna comment it out, okay? So we need to add that in here, but we need to reference our transform. So we'll do public transform, and we have our player building, okay? Now, we're gonna do that right down here. So let's just say else if type is equal to player buildings, then buildings dot player building, and we'll just call this PB, is equal to, and you know what? I don't like the fact that this says unit. Um, we're just gonna do TF for transform, okay? And so we'll just change this to TF and this to TF. Now, unit name, we're not really going to be able to change that much. Actually, we can. We can just say name, right? And then we'll just change this to name and change this to name. Okay. Now, in here, we actually want to make this to our building handler one, right? So instead, we need to say buildings dot building handler dot instance dot get. Is that what it still says in there? Is it get basic unit stats? Oh, if that's the case, we'll need to change that. It looks like it is. So in our unit or our building handler, let's just change the name of this. Instead of unit, we'll say building and save that. Hop back over into player manager and change unit to building. Okay. Okay, let's see what's happening here. Oh, we need to, I'm going to hit Control X on this because we'll use it here in just a second. But we're setting what this is. So we need to say equals our transform dot get component buildings dot player player building. Okay. And then we want to come down here and say pb dot base stats are equal to, I'm going to paste what I cut out earlier. Okay. And that is going to allow us to start setting them. So we need to put it here in our awake function, just like we have the other. So we're going to set basic stats and we'll do player buildings. Okay. Awesome. Now that we have it set to where it'll actually start setting our stats, we need to hop into Unity and make sure that all of our references and our scripts are on properly. Okay, so we added a building handler. And if you remember, we have a game controller with a player manager. So our game controller has our unit handler. So let's just add our building handler there as well. Okay, now we're missing, remember when we removed those layers and I said we could just set them in Unity? Let's do that now. So our player unit layer is going to be player units, and enemy units layer is going to be enemy units. Now in our building handler, it's asking for our barracks building. Oh, and I just named this building, so I'm going to rename this to barracks. Okay, so let's look at our game controller and drop our barracks scriptable object in there. Great. So now we know all that's set. Let's check out our player manager. So on our player manager, we have player buildings. Okay. And that's this prefab that, or this empty object that we made before to hold all of our buildings. Okay. Now that we have that set, let's go to our building and let's open this up again and let's put on here player building. Okay. And that'll be able to read the stats later. So we'll just Control S to save and back out of that. Okay. Now I'm going to put this building under barracks. So that way when we read, it'll automatically know where to find it. And let's just give this a whirl and see if it works. So let's hit play. Okay, we don't have any errors. That's good. And let's check out our building. Our building, and then we have base stats. Let's see if they're on here. And they are. So we have health of 500, we have armor of 25, and an attack of 0, which is awesome. And so that's it. Now that we can place buildings that actually have stats, we're going to start moving in closer to allowing our buildings to create our characters in the next video. So I really hope that was helpful for you guys, and I really hope you enjoyed or still enjoying this series so far. If you are enjoying it, please make sure that you subscribe, smash like on the video, and until next time, guys. Peace.